The library was almost empty that Tuesday evening. Most students had already gone back to their dorms or were out enjoying dinner with friends. But Ryan preferred it this way. Quiet, peaceful, with just the soft hum of the air conditioning and the occasional whisper of turning pages. He sat at his favorite table in the corner, the one by the big window that looked out onto the campus garden. This spot had become his second home over the past few months. His books were spread out in a neat circle around him, poetry collections, literary theory texts, and his worn notebook filled with his own writing. Ryan was working on something important. His final project for his English literature degree was about how poets express feelings they can't say out loud. He found it fascinating how writers could capture emotions that people struggle to put into words in real life. Tonight, he was particularly focused on a poem he'd been writing about loneliness and connection. The clock on the wall showed 8:30 p.m. Ryan had been here for 3 hours already. But time seemed to disappear when he was lost in his work. He took a sip of his now-cold coffee and continued writing. The words were flowing tonight, which didn't always happen. Sometimes he would sit for hours and barely write a single line as he wrote. Ryan noticed something from the corner of his eye. Someone was walking toward his table. This was unusual, because people rarely came to this section of the library, especially not this late. He looked up and saw a girl approaching his table with confident steps. She was different from the other students he usually saw around campus. Her clothes looked like they came from a vintage shop, a long, colorful skirt and a cardigan with small paint stains on the sleeves. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun with a pencil stuck through it. She carried a small canvas bag that looked well used and had colorful patches sewn onto it. What struck Ryan most was her eyes. They seemed to see everything, taking in details that other people might miss. She moved with purpose, like she knew exactly where she was going and what she wanted to do, without asking permission or even saying hello. She pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. Ryan was so surprised he forgot to close his notebook. No one had ever just sat at his table before. The library had plenty of empty seats, so why would she choose his table?
Nice.
The girl leaned forward slightly, resting her chin on her hand. She looked directly at Ryan with those observant eyes and smiled. It wasn't a shy smile or a polite one. It was confident and somehow knowing, like she had a secret she was about to share. "I've heard the beautiful things you've said about me," she said in a clear, steady voice. Ryan felt his heart skip a beat. He stared at her, trying to process what she had just said. Beautiful things about her. He had never seen this girl before in his life. He would definitely remember someone who looked like her. Her statement made no sense at all. "I'm sorry, but I think you have the wrong person," Ryan managed to say, his voice coming out quieter than he intended. "I don't think we've ever met." The girl's smile grew wider. She tilted her head to one side, studying his face like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Haven't we, though? Sometimes people know each other without realizing it." Ryan felt completely confused. Was this some kind of joke? Maybe his roommate had put her up to this as a prank. But something in her expression told him this wasn't a game. She seemed genuinely serious about what she was saying. "I really don't understand," Ryan said, closing his notebook instinctively. "I think you might have me confused with someone else. I spend most of my time here alone, working on my writing. I don't really talk to many people." The girl nodded as if this confirmed something she already knew. "Exactly. That's what makes the things you say so special. You don't waste words on small talk or meaningless conversation. When you speak, it matters." Ryan felt even more puzzled. When did he speak? When did she hear him? He tried to think of any recent conversations he might have had that this girl could have overheard, but he came up blank. His daily routine was pretty simple. Classes, library, coffee shop, sleep. He didn't give speeches or presentations. He rarely even answered questions in class, unless the professor directly called on him. "I really think there's been a misunderstanding," Ryan said, feeling heat rise in his cheeks. "Maybe you're thinking of someone else who looks like me." The girl shook her head slowly. "No misunderstanding. I know exactly who you are, Ryan. You sit here every Tuesday and Thursday evening. You always order the same coffee from the shop downstairs. Medium size, extra shot, no sugar. You tap your pen against your notebook when you're thinking, and you always choose the table by the window." Ryan's mouth fell open. How did she know all of this? How did she even know his name? He definitely would have remembered telling someone his daily routine. A chill ran down his spine as he realized she had been watching him, studying his habits. "How do you know all that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "'Cause I pay attention," she replied simply. "Most people walk through life without really seeing what's around them, but some people are worth watching. Some people are worth knowing, even from a distance." Ryan didn't know whether to feel flattered or worried. This was definitely not a normal conversation. Part of him wanted to pack up his books and leave, but another part of him was curious. This girl was unlike anyone he had ever met. There was something mysterious about her that made him want to understand what she was talking about. "But you said, I've said beautiful things about you," Ryan pressed. "When? Where?" "I honestly don't remember ever talking about you to anyone." The girl's expression grew softer, almost tender. "Not to people, to the universe. Through your words, your poems, your stories, you've been writing about me without knowing it." Ryan felt his world tilt slightly. His writing? How could she know about his writing? Kept his notebook private. The only time he ever shared his work was coffee shop, he said suddenly, the realization hitting him. The poetry readings at the coffee shop on campus. The girl's smile returned, bright and triumphant. "Now you're starting to understand." Ryan's mind raced. He had been reading his poetry at the open mic nights at the campus coffee shop for a few months now. It was something his professor had encouraged him to do, to get comfortable sharing his work with others. But the audiences were always small, maybe 10 or 15 people at most. He had never paid attention to who was listening. "You were there," Ryan said, and it wasn't a question. "I was there," she confirmed. "Every time you read, sitting in the back corner, usually with a sketchbook. You never looked up from your notebook long enough to notice me." Ryan felt embarrassed. He had been so nervous during those readings that he had focused entirely on his notebook, afraid to make eye contact with the audience. He had no idea who had been listening to his most personal thoughts and feelings. 3 weeks ago, the girl continued, you read a poem called "To the Girl I'll Never Meet." Do you remember it? Ryan's face turned red. He remembered that poem very well. It was one of his more personal pieces, about longing for connection with someone who understood art and beauty the way he did. He had written it during a particularly lonely week, when he felt like he was surrounded by people, but still completely alone. "You describe someone who sees the world differently," she said, her voice gentle now. "Someone who finds beauty in unexpected places. Someone who isn't afraid to be different from everyone else." Ryan nodded slowly. He had written those exact words. But it had been about an imaginary person, a dream of someone he hoped to meet someday. "You were describing me," the girl said simply. "And somehow, without knowing it, you were describing exactly who I am." The library felt incredibly quiet around them. Ryan could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. This was either the most romantic thing that had ever happened to him, or the most unsettling. He wasn't sure which. The girl stood up slowly, shouldering her canvas bag. "Room 247, she said. "Tomorrow at 3 p.m. Come find me there, and I'll show you something that will make everything clear." "Wait!" Ryan called out as she turned to leave. "What's your name?" She paused and looked back at him with that mysterious smile. "Luna and Ryan. Don't overthink this. Sometimes the most beautiful things happen when we stop trying to understand everything and just trust that the universe has a plan." With that, she walked away, leaving Ryan alone with his books and a head full of questions. He sat there for a long time after she left, staring at the empty chair across from him and wondering if he had just imagined the entire conversation. But he hadn't imagined it. Tomorrow at 3 p.m., room 247, he already knew he would be there. Ryan couldn't sleep that night. He tossed and turned in his dorm bed, staring at the ceiling and replaying every word Luna had said. Her voice kept echoing in his mind, confident, mysterious, like she knew secrets about him that he didn't even know himself. His roommate Alex was snoring softly in the bed across the room, completely unaware of the strange encounter that had turned Ryan's world upside down. Ryan envied his peaceful sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Luna's face, those sharp, observant eyes that seemed to see right through him. By morning, Ryan had convinced himself it was all some elaborate prank. Maybe someone from his poetry class had put her up too. It may be she was an acting student practicing for a role. It was the only logical explanation for what had happened. But as he got ready for his morning classes, doubt crept in. How would a stranger know his exact routine? How would they know about his coffee order, or which table he always chose? And most importantly, how would they know about his poetry readings at the coffee shop? During his first class, Ryan found himself completely distracted. His professor was discussing symbolism in modern literature, but all Ryan could think about was room 247 and the mysterious invitation. He had looked up the room number online and discovered it was in the basement of the humanities building, a part of campus he rarely visited. "Ryan, what do you think about the use of hidden meanings in contemporary poetry?" his professor asked, pulling him back to reality. Ryan felt his face flush. I think sometimes poets write about things they don't fully understand themselves. Maybe the meaning becomes clear later, after someone else helps them see it." His professor nodded approvingly, but Ryan barely heard the response. He was thinking about his own poetry and Luna's claim that he had been writing about her without knowing it. After class, Ryan decided to do some detective work. He walked to the campus coffee shop, where he had been reading his poetry in the morning. The crowd was different from the evening group, mostly students grabbing quick coffee before class, not the artistic crowd that gathered for open mic nights. He approached the counter where Jenny, the barista, was working. She had been there for most of his poetry readings and might remember seeing Luna. "Hey, Jenny," Ryan said, ordering his usual coffee. "I have a weird question. Do you remember seeing a girl at the poetry nights?" She would have been sitting in the back corner, probably with a sketchbook. Long, colorful skirt, paint on her clothes. Paused while making his coffee, thinking, "Oh, you mean the art student? Yeah, she's been coming for months. Always sits in the same spot, always drawing while people read. Quiet girl, but she pays attention to everything." Why? Ryan's heart started beating faster. So Luna had been telling the truth about attending his readings. "Do you know her name or anything about her?" "Not really," Jenny said, handing him his coffee. "She usually orders tea instead of coffee. Always pays with exact change. Sometimes she leaves little sketches behind on the table. It's pretty talented." From what I could see, Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. This was getting more real by the minute. "Has she ever said anything about the poetry readings? About any of the poets?" Jenny smiled. "Now that you mention it, she did ask about you once. A few weeks ago, after you read that poem about loneliness, she wanted to know if you came here regularly. I told her you were one of our most consistent readers." Ryan thanked Jenny and left the coffee shop with his mind racing. Luna hadn't just been watching him. She had been asking about him. But why? And what did she mean when she said he had been writing about her? The rest of the day dragged by slowly. Ryan attended his afternoon classes, but he couldn't focus on anything the professors were saying. His notebook remained blank during lectures that would normally fill pages with his thoughts and observations. Finally, at 2:45 p.m., Ryan found himself standing outside the humanities building. His hands were sweating despite the cool weather. Part of him wanted to turn around and go back to his dorm, to pretend the whole thing had never happened. But a bigger part of him needed to know what Luna wanted to show him. Room 247 was exactly where the campus map said it would be, in the basement, down a hallway he had never explored before. The basement had a different feel from the rest of the building. It was older, with exposed brick walls and lower ceilings. The lighting was softer, creating shadows that made everything feel mysterious. Ryan found the door marked 247 and stood outside for a moment, gathering his courage. He could hear soft music playing inside, something classical with strings and piano. Taking a deep breath, he knocked. "Come in," Luna's voice called from inside. Ryan opened the door and stepped into a completely different world. The room was an art studio, but unlike any classroom he had ever seen. The walls were covered with paintings and sketches, some finished and some still in progress. Canvases were stacked against every available surface. The smell of paint and turpentine filled the air. But what took Ryan's breath away were the subjects of the artwork. He recognized the scenes immediately: the library where he studied, the coffee shop where he read poetry, the path he took across campus every day, and in many of the paintings there was a figure that looked unmistakably like him. Luna was standing at an easel in the center of the room, wearing a paint-stained apron over her vintage dress. She had been working on a new painting, a scene of the library from the night before, with Ryan sitting at his corner table, surrounded by golden light from the window. "Welcome to my studio," Luna said, setting down her brush. "Been wondering if you would actually come." Ryan walked slowly around the room, examining the artwork. There were dozens of paintings and sketches, all depicting moments from his daily life. But they weren't just realistic portraits. They captured emotions and feelings that Ryan hadn't even realized he was experiencing. "How long have you been watching me?" Ryan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "About 6 months," Luna replied honestly. "I started coming to the coffee shop because I heard they had good poetry readings. But after I heard you read the first time, I kept coming back. There was something about your words that made me want to capture them visually." Ryan stopped in front of a painting that showed him sitting by the campus lake, the place where he often went to think when he was stuck on a poem. In the painting, he looked peaceful but lonely, surrounded by the beauty of nature, but somehow separate from it. "You've been following me," Ryan said, but there was no anger in his voice. He was too amazed by what he was seeing to feel upset. "I've been inspired by you," Luna corrected. "There's a difference. I never invaded your privacy or tried to interfere with your life. I just observed, and what I observed was beautiful enough to paint." Ryan turned to face her. "But you said I've been writing about you. How is that possible if I didn't even know you existed?" Luna smiled and walked over to a small table where she had several notebooks stacked. She picked up one and opened it. To a page marked with a ribbon. "This is a copy of the poem you read 3 weeks ago," she said. "The one called to the girl I'll never meet. Do you remember writing it?" Ryan nodded. He remembered that poem very well. It had come from a place of deep loneliness and longing. "You wrote about a girl who sees the world through an artist's eyes," Luna continued, reading from the notebook. "Someone who finds beauty in ordinary moments. Someone who isn't afraid to be different from everyone else. Someone who understands that art isn't just about creating something pretty, it's about capturing truth." As Luna read his own words back to him, Ryan felt goosebumps rise on his arms. He had written those exact descriptions, but he had been writing about an imaginary person, someone he hoped to meet someday. "You were describing me," Luna said softly, "down to the smallest detail. The way I dress, the way I think, the way I approach my art. It was like you could see me, even though we had never spoken." Ryan stared at her in amazement. "But that's impossible. I made that person up. I was writing about someone I wished existed." Luna stepped closer to him, her eyes bright with excitement. "Don't you see? That's exactly what makes it so beautiful. You weren't just making someone up, you were calling someone into your life. Through your poetry, through your longing for connection, you were sending a message to the universe. And I heard it." Ryan felt like the ground was shifting beneath his feet. Everything he thought he knew about coincidence and fate was being challenged. Could it really be possible that his writing had somehow drawn Luna to him? "I have something else to show you," Luna said, walking over to a covered easel in the corner. "This is the painting I've been working on since I first heard your poetry." She pulled away the cloth, revealing a large canvas that took Ryan's breath away. It showed 2 figures, one writing at a desk, one painting at an easel. But they were connected by streams of light that flowed between them, carrying words and images back and forth. The paintings somehow captured the idea that they had been creating art about each other without knowing it. "This is us," Luna said. "Simply 2 artists who found each other through their work, even before they found each other in person." Ryan stood in front of the painting, feeling overwhelmed by the beauty and strangeness of it all. His logical mind was telling him that this was all an incredible coincidence, but his heart was telling him something to fear. Ryan spent the next hour in Luna's studio, walking slowly from painting to painting, trying to understand what he was seeing. Each artwork showed a different moment from his life, but they were painted with such emotion and detail that it felt like Luna had been inside his head, experiencing his thoughts and feelings. "How did you know I was sad in this one?" Ryan asked, stopping in front of a painting that showed him sitting alone in the campus cafeteria. In the painting, he looked lonely despite being surrounded by other students. I remember that day. Had just gotten a rejection letter from a poetry contest. I didn't think anyone could tell how disappointed I was. Luna joined him in front of the painting, studying it like she was seeing it for the first time. Body language tells stories that words sometimes can't. The way you held your shoulders, how you stirred your coffee without drinking it. The way you kept checking your phone but never responded to messages. Art is about seeing what people try to hide. Ryan felt exposed, but not uncomfortable. There was something gentle about the way Luna observed the world. She wasn't judging him or trying to invade his privacy. She was simply paying attention in a way that most people never did. "Can I ask you something?" Ryan said, turning to face her. "Why me? There are hundreds of students on this campus. Why did you choose to paint me?" Luna smiled and walked over to a small chair covered in paint splatters. She sat down and gestured for Ryan to sit on a nearby stool. "Do you remember the first poem you read at the coffee shop? It was about 4 months ago. You were so nervous your hands were shaking." Ryan laughed despite himself. "I remember. I was terrified. I had never read my work out loud before. The poem was about finding beauty in everyday moments." Luna continued. "You described watching an old man feed pigeons in the park and how his simple act of kindness made you believe in goodness again. Most people would have walked past that man without a second thought, but you saw poetry in his actions." Ryan remembered that poem clearly. It had been inspired by a moment he witnessed on his way to class one morning. An elderly man had been sitting on a bench, carefully breaking up bread and sharing it with a group of pigeons. Something about the scene had touched Ryan deeply. "That's when I knew you were different," Luna said. "You see the world the way I do. You notice the small things that matter. You understand that art isn't just about creating something beautiful. It's about finding meaning in ordinary life." Over the next few days, Ryan and Luna began meeting regularly in the studio. Luna would paint while Ryan wrote in his notebook, and they would share their work with each other. It was the first time Ryan had ever felt completely comfortable showing his writing to someone else. "Read me the one you just finished," Luna said one afternoon, looking up from a canvas where she was painting the view from the studio window. Ryan hesitated. The poem was personal, inspired by their growing friendship. It's about connection. It's about how sometimes you meet someone who makes you feel less alone in the world. "Those are the best kind of poems," Luna encouraged. "The ones that come from real feeling." Ryan cleared his throat and began to read. The poem was about two people who had been searching for each other without knowing it, who had found each other through their art before they found each other in person. As he read, he watched Luna's face light up with understanding. "That's beautiful," she said when he finished. "And it's true. We have been searching for each other, haven't we? For our art, or our need to be understood by someone who sees the world the same way we do." Ryan felt his heart beat faster. He was starting to care about Luna more than he had expected. But there was something in her expression that made him think she was holding back, not telling him everything. "Luna, can I ask you something personal?" Ryan said, setting down his notebook. She nodded, but he noticed she looked a little nervous. "Why? Do you sometimes look sad when you think I'm not watching? Hey, even when we're having a good time together, there's something in your eyes that seems ... distant." Luna put down her paintbrush and was quiet for a long moment. She walked over to the window and looked out at the campus, her shoulders tense. "There's something I haven't told you," she said finally. "Something important." Ryan felt his stomach drop. He had been afraid that this connection was too good to be true, that there was something he didn't know that would change everything. "What is it?" he asked gently. Luna turned back to him, and he could see tears forming in her eyes. "I've been accepted to an art residency program in Italy. It's an incredible opportunity. 6 months working with some of the best artists in the world. I applied months ago, before I met you." Ryan felt like someone had punched him in the chest. "When do you leave?" 2 weeks, Luna whispered. "I've been trying to figure out how to tell you. I've been putting it off because I didn't want to ruin what we have." Ryan stood up from his stool, processing this information. 2 weeks. Just when he had found someone who understood him, who who saw the world the way he did. She was leaving. "Didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Because I was scared," Luna admitted. "I've never felt connected to someone the way I feel connected to you. I've never had someone understand my art the way you do, or shared my work with someone who really gets it. I didn't want to start something that I knew I would have to end." Ryan walked over to one of Luna's paintings, the one of him writing in the library. He studied it, trying to understand his own feelings. He was hurt that she had kept this secret, but he also understood her. "Fear. Is this why you approached me in the library?" he asked. "Because you knew you were leaving and wanted to finally meet me," Luna nodded. "I'd been watching you for months, and I knew I couldn't leave without talking to you at least once. Thought maybe we could have a few conversations, and then I could go to Italy knowing I had met the person who inspired so much of my art. But it's become more than that," Ryan said, and it wasn't a question. "Much more," Luna agreed. "I didn't expect to care about you this much. I didn't expect to want to stay." Ryan turned back to her. "Do you want to stay?" Luna's tears were flowing freely now. "Part of me does, but this residency is everything I've worked for. It's my chance to become the artist I've always dreamed of being. I can't give that up, even for someone as wonderful as you." Ryan felt torn between admiration for her dedication and sadness about losing her. He understood the importance of following your dreams, but it didn't make the situation any less painful. "What do we do now?" he asked. Luna wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. "I don't know. I've never been in this situation before. I've always been so focused on my art that I never let myself get close to anyone." Ryan walked over to her and took her hands. They were paint-stained and warm, and holding them felt like the most natural thing in the world. "Oh, maybe we don't have to figure it all out right now," he said. "Maybe we just make the most of the time we have left." Luna looked up at him with surprise. "You're not angry with me?" "I'm sad," Ryan admitted. "But I'm not angry. I understand why you have to go. And I'd rather have 2 weeks with you than never have met you at all." Luna smiled through her tears. "You really mean that?" "I really mean that," Ryan said. "Besides, we're both artists. We're used to finding beauty in temporary things. Maybe this is just another kind of art, a connection that's beautiful because it's brief." Luna laughed, and the sound filled the studio with warmth. Leave it to a poet to find the perfect words for an impossible situation. "So what do we do with these 2 weeks?" Ryan asked. Luna looked around the studio, at all the paintings she had created of his life, and at the notebook where he had written poems inspired by her. "We create something together, something that captures this moment, this connection we've found, something that will last even after I'm gone." Ryan felt a spark of excitement, despite his sadness. "What kind of something?" "I don't know yet," Luna said, "but we'll figure it out. After all, we're both experts at finding beauty in the unexpected." As Ryan left the studio that evening, he felt a mixture of emotions he had never experienced before. He was sad about Luna's departure, but also grateful for the time they would have together. He was scared about getting too attached to someone who was leaving, but also excited about the creative project they would work on together, for the first time in his life. Ryan was learning that some of the most beautiful things come with an expiration date, and that sometimes the temporary nature of something is exactly what makes it precious. The next morning, Ryan woke up with a strange mix of excitement and sadness. He had only 2 weeks left with Luna, but instead of feeling hopeless, he felt determined to make every moment count. As he got ready for class, he found himself thinking about their plan to create something together. During his literature class, Ryan could barely focus on the lecture. His professor was discussing the power of collaboration in art, which felt like the universe was sending him a message.
Always.
Ended, he practically ran to Luna's studio. He found her already working, but not on a painting. She was sitting at a small table with several notebooks spread out in front of her, reading intently. When she looked up and saw him, her face broke into a smile that made his heart skip. "Perfect timing," she said. "I've been reading through copies of all your poems from the coffee shop readings. Jenny at the coffee shop helped me gather them. Apparently she keeps copies of everything people read there." Ryan felt his cheeks warm. "You've been reading all of my work?" Every single poem, Luna confirmed. And I've discovered something incredible. You want to know what it is? Ryan sat down across from her, curious and slightly nervous. What did you find? Luna picked up one of the notebooks and flipped to a page marked with a colorful bookmark. This poem is from your very first reading 4 months ago. The one about the old man feeding pigeons. Listen to this line. She would understand why small acts of kindness matter more than grand gestures. Ryan nodded. I remember writing that. I was thinking about the kind of person who would appreciate that moment the way I did. And this one. Luna continued, flipping to another page. From 6 weeks ago, she paints with colors that don't exist in any art store, now finding shades of emotion in everyday light. You wrote that in a poem about longing for creative partnership. Ryan's eyes widened. He remembered that poem too. He had been feeling particularly isolated as an artist, wishing he had someone to share his creative process with. Luna, what are you getting at? Ryan asked, though he was starting to understand Luna. Spread out several poems on the table, each one marked with different colored tabs. You haven't just been writing about me recently, Ryan. You've been writing about me for months, long before we ever spoke. Every single poem you've read at the coffee shop has had some reference to a girl who thinks like me, acts like me, creates like me. Ryan stared at the poems laid out in front of him. As Luna pointed out line after line, he began to see the pattern she had discovered. Without realizing it, he had been describing Luna in his poetry for months. But how is that possible? Ryan asked, feeling overwhelmed. I didn't even know you existed. That's exactly what makes it so beautiful, Luna said, her eyes bright with excitement. You were calling me into your life through your art. Every poem was like a message to the universe, describing exactly the kind of person you needed to meet. Ryan picked up one of the poems and read it with new eyes. The words he had written months ago now seemed to perfectly describe Luna, her creativity, her way of seeing the world, even small details like her preference for vintage clothes, and her habit of carrying art supplies everywhere. This is impossible, Ryan said, but he was smiling. This kind of thing doesn't happen in real life, doesn't it? Luna asked. Think about all the stories you've heard about people who meet exactly the right person at exactly the right time. Maybe it's not coincidence. Maybe it's the result of putting your deepest wishes out into the world through art. Luna stood up and walked over to a covered easel that Ryan hadn't noticed before. I have something to show you. This is what I've been working on since I realized the truth about your poems. She pulled away the cloth to reveal a large painting that took Ryan's breath away. It showed a timeline of sorts, 2 parallel lines representing their lives over the past few months. On one side were images representing his poems, and on the other side were images of Luna's daily life. The amazing thing was how perfectly they matched up. Every time you wrote about a girl who loved rainy days, I had painted a stormy sky, Luna explained, pointing to corresponding images on the canvas. When you wrote about someone who found beauty in old buildings, I had spent that same week sketching the historic architecture downtown. Ryan studied the painting in amazement. The connections were undeniable. It was as if they had been living parallel lives, thinking similar thoughts, and creating complementary art without knowing about each other. We've been connected this whole time, Ryan said softly, even before we met. Exactly, Luna agreed. And that's what gave me the idea for our project. She led him over to a large blank canvas that was set up next to an empty easel. Beside it was a small table with poetry, notebooks, and art supplies. I want us to create something together that tells our story, Luna said. Not just the story of the past 2 weeks, but the story of how we found each other through our art. I want to paint while you write, and let our creative energies flow together. Ryan felt a surge of excitement, like a live collaboration. Exactly. We'll spend the next 2 weeks creating together every day. I'll paint our story while you write it. We'll let each other's work influence what we create, just like we've been doing unconsciously for months. Ryan loved the idea, but he was also nervous. What if it doesn't work? What if we can't create something good together? Luna walked over to him and took his hands. Ryan, we've already been creating together for months without knowing it. Every poem you wrote inspired a painting I didn't even realize was connected to you. Every painting I made captured emotions you were expressing. In words, we're already artistic partners. We just didn't know it. Over the next few days, Ryan and Luna fell into a rhythm of collaboration that felt completely natural. They would meet in the studio every afternoon after Ryan's classes. Luna would set up her paints while Ryan arranged his notebooks, and then they would begin creating. The process was magical, as Ryan wrote about their first meeting in the library. Luna painted the scene with colors that perfectly captured the mood he was describing. When Luna painted a sunset that reminded her of hope mixed with sadness, Ryan found himself writing about the beauty of temporary moments. "Read me what you just wrote," Luna said one afternoon, pausing in her painting of their hands reaching toward each other across a table covered in art supplies. Ryan looked down at his notebook, surprised by what he had written. "It's about how some people come into your life not to stay forever, but to show you something important about yourself. They're like shooting stars, brief but brilliant, gone quickly but impossible to forget." Luna smiled and Ryan saw tears in her eyes. "That's exactly how I feel about us. You've shown me that art is even more beautiful when it's shared with someone who understands it." As their project grew, Ryan began to understand something profound about creativity and connection. The artwork they were creating together was unlike anything either of them had made alone. It had a depth and emotion that came from two artistic souls working in harmony. "I've never created anything this meaningful before," Ryan admitted one evening as they cleaned up their supplies. Their collaborative piece was nearly finished, a large canvas, filled with painted scenes and handwritten poems that told the story of their impossible connection. "Neither have I," Luna agreed. "I think it's because we're creating from a place of complete honesty. We know our time is limited, so we're not holding anything back." Ryan looked at their artwork, weeks of collaboration that captured not just their story, but the deeper truth about how art can bring people together across time and space. Even though Luna would be leaving soon, they had created something that would last forever. "Luna," Ryan said, "I need to tell you something. Past 2 weeks have been the most creative and inspired I've ever felt. You've changed the way I think about art and connection and possibility." Luna stopped cleaning her brushes and looked at him. "You've changed me too, Ryan. Before I met you, I thought art was something you created alone. Now I understand that. The most beautiful art comes from sharing your vision with someone who really sees you." As they stood in the studio surrounded by their collaborative masterpiece, Ryan realized that Luna had been right about the power of putting your wishes into the world through art. His poems had called her to him. Her paintings had prepared her to recognize him when they finally met. They had found each other through their art. And now, their art would be the thing that kept them connected even when distance separated them. The final week arrived faster than either Ryan or Luna wanted. Their collaborative artwork was nearly complete. The studio had become filled with the evidence of their creative partnership. Paintings and poems covered every surface, telling the story of two artists who had found each other through their work. Ryan found himself spending more and more time in the studio, not wanting to waste a single moment. He would arrive early in the morning before his classes and stay late into the evening. Luna seemed to feel the same way. She was always there when he arrived, already working on some new piece that captured another aspect of their connection. "Keep thinking about what happens after you leave," Ryan admitted one afternoon, as he watched Luna add the final touches to a painting of their hands, creating art together. "Will we stay in touch? Will this feeling last? Or will it fade when you're surrounded by new people and new experiences?" Luna paused with her brush halfway to the canvas. "I've been wondering the same thing. I've never had a connection like this before. I don't know how to preserve it across distance and time." Ryan set down his pen and walked over to where she was working. "Maybe we don't need to preserve it exactly as it is. Maybe it's supposed to change and grow into something different." "What do you mean?" Luna asked, turning to face him. "I mean, maybe the point isn't to keep everything exactly the same. Maybe the point is to let this experience change us and carry that change with us wherever we go." Luna smiled, but her eyes were sad. "You're probably right. But it's still going to be hard to say goodbye." On Luna's last day, they met in the studio one final time. Their collaborative artwork was complete, a large canvas that told their entire story through painted scenes and handwritten poems. It was beautiful and heartbreaking and perfect. "I have something for you," Luna said, walking over to a small wrapped package on her table. "I wanted to give you something to remember this time by." Ryan unwrapped the package carefully. Inside was a small painting of the library table where they had first met. But in the painting, there were two figures, Ryan writing in his notebook and a ghostly outline of Luna sitting across from him, as if she had always been there, waiting for him to notice her. "This is how I always felt," Luna explained. "I was there with you even before we spoke. Like we were connected across the space between us." Ryan felt tears forming in his eyes. "It's perfect. I have something for you too." He handed her a leather-bound notebook filled with handwritten poems. "These are all the poems I've written since we met, plus copies of all the ones I wrote before that turned out to be about you. I want you to have them so you can remember that someone saw you clearly enough to write about you before he even knew your name." Luna opened the notebook and read the first page, which contained a new poem Ryan had written just for her. It was about how some people come into your life like lightning, brief but illuminating, gone quickly but leaving everything changed. "Ryan, this is beautiful," she whispered. "I'll treasure it always." They spent their last hour together sitting in front of their collaborative artwork, not talking much, just being present with each other and with what they had created. The studio felt different now, charged with the energy of everything they had shared. "I need to tell you something," Luna said as their time together was coming to an end. "These past 2 weeks have been the most creative and inspired I've ever felt. You've shown me that art isn't just about expressing yourself. It's about connecting with other people in ways that words alone can't accomplish." "You've taught me something too," Ryan replied. "You've shown me that creativity is more powerful when it's shared, that the best art comes from opening yourself up to someone else's vision and letting it change your own." When it was time for Luna to leave, they stood together in front of their masterpiece one last time. The artwork would stay in the studio, a permanent reminder of their brief but meaningful connection. "What happens now?" Ryan asked. "Now we take what we've learned and use it to create even more beautiful things," Luna said. "We stay connected through our art, even when we can't be connected in person. Will you write to me? Tell me about the art you're creating in Italy." Of course, Luna promised. "And you have to promise to keep reading your poetry at the coffee shop. I want to know that you're still putting your words out into the world." They hugged goodbye in the studio, surrounded by all the art they had created together, sad but also hopeful, an ending that felt like a beginning. 6 months later, Ryan received a package from Italy. Inside was an invitation to an art exhibition in the campus gallery. The exhibition was called Distant Connections. It featured paintings Luna had created during her residency, along with poems Ryan had written and sent to her in letters. Ryan attended the opening night of the exhibition, amazed to see how their long-distance artistic collaboration had continued to evolve. Luna's paintings from Italy were beautiful, but they were also different from her earlier work. They had a confidence and boldness that spoke of an artist who had found her voice. Alongside the paintings were Ryan's poems, printed on elegant cards and displayed throughout the gallery. Seeing his words presented as art, valued and appreciated by strangers, gave Ryan a new understanding of the power of his own creativity. The centerpiece of the exhibition was there, original collaborative artwork from the studio, along with a plaque that told the story of how it was created. Visitors spent long minutes studying it, drawn to the obvious love and connection that radiated from every brushstroke and written word. "It's incredible, isn't it?" a voice said behind Ryan. He turned to find Jenny from the coffee shop, looking at the collaborative piece with wonder. "It really is," Ryan agreed. "I still can't believe we created something so beautiful together." "You know what I think is most amazing?" Jenny said. "You two are still creating together, even though you're thousands of miles apart." "Luna sent me copies of the letters you've been writing to each other. They're like one long, artistic conversation," Ryan smiled. Jenny was right. Even though Luna was in Italy, they had continued to inspire each other's work through their correspondence. His poetry had grown stronger and more confident, while her paintings had gained depth and emotional complexity. A year later, Ryan graduated with honors and was accepted into a graduate program for creative writing. His thesis project was a collection of poems about connection and creativity. many of them inspired by his time with Luna. The collection was later published by a small press. His first book of poetry, Luna returned from Italy as an established artist with her first solo exhibition already planned. She had grown confident and successful. But she had never forgotten the lesson Ryan taught her about the power of shared creativity. They met for coffee when she returned. Both changed by their experiences, but still recognizably themselves. They talked for hours about their art, their growth, and the ways their brief but intense connection had continued to influence their work. "I have something to show you," Luna said, pulling out a small sketchbook. "I drew this while I was in Italy, looking at the sunset over the Mediterranean." The sketch showed two figures standing on opposite sides of a vast body of water, each holding up artwork to show the other. Light stretched between them across the distance, connecting their creations. "That's us," Ryan said, understanding immediately. "That's us," Luna confirmed. "Distance doesn't break real connections. It just changes the way they look." Years passed. Ryan became a professor of creative writing, teaching students about the power of vulnerability and connection in art. He often told the story of Luna, encouraging his students to pay attention to the people and moments that move them, even if they don't understand why. Luna became a successful artist whose work was known for its emotional depth and its exploration of human connection. She never forgot the lesson that art is more beautiful when it's shared with someone who truly sees you. They stayed in touch through letters and occasional visits, watching each other's careers grow and evolve. Their relationship had transformed from romance into something deeper, a creative partnership that transcended time and distance. Sometimes Ryan would see one of Luna's paintings in a gallery and recognize a feeling or moment they had shared. Sometimes Luna would read one of Ryan's poems and hear the echo of conversations they had in the studio all those years ago. Their brief time together had taught them both that the most meaningful connections aren't always the ones that last forever. Sometimes the most beautiful relationships are the ones that burn bright and brief, leaving both people forever changed and forever grateful for the experience of being truly seen by another person. In the end, Ryan and Luna had given each other the greatest gift any artist can receive: the knowledge that their work matters, their vision has value, and that somewhere in the world there is someone who understands exactly what they're trying to say.